Benjamin Impossible. Chapter 16. Puppet Master. The Metal Club pole-axed Dr. Glockenspiel, driving him to his knees and crushing his skull with a terrific crunch. Even through the strengthened suit, Benjamin could feel the jolt in his arms as the uniformed man was driven down to the ground. The broken man tottered briefly on his knees, then fell backward, his body motionless and still. Only his mustache moved, the fine hairs ruffling in the wind. Captain Lemontime, completely surprised by this turn of events, pulled out his weapon and jumped forward in a crouch, prepared for action. "What the heck are you doing, kid?" the captain yelled, a note of panic in his voice as he looked at the body on the ground. "Relax, Captain," Benjamin said. "It's cool." "Cool?" the captain said, his voice rising. "You just killed Dr. Glockenspiel in cold blood." Benjamin laughed cruelly. "That was hardly cold blood, Lemonhead. Glockenspiel has us surrounded by killer robots. He is holding my baby brother for ransom, and he just threatened to hurt my father. I think I have a pretty good case for self-defense." "What?" Captain Lemontime spluttered. "Are you crazy?" "Chill out, dude. It was just a robot." "A robot? How do you know?" "Well, for one thing, there aren't any blood splatters or pieces of brain on my club here," Benjamin said brightly. "Yeah?" Captain Lemontime said hopefully. "Plus, it's getting back up," Benjamin said, pointing at the figure on the ground. Captain Lemontime watched, horrified, as the disfigured man bent at the waist and slowly sat up. Benjamin's steel club had crushed half the skull and ripped across the cheekbone. One eye was torn from its socket and hung down the face attached by thin wires. The jaw hung at an odd angle and several teeth were missing. The mangled doctor began to laugh maniacally. They could see sparks and spinning gears inside the cavity in his head where his brain should have been. "Glockenspiel is a robot!" Lemontime exclaimed. "Well done," the robotic man cackled. "Well done indeed. I didn't expect you to figure it out so quickly." "I am curious," the disfigured man said, tilting his head toward Benjamin. "How could you tell that I was a machine?" Benjamin tapped his foot, looking down at the robot in disgust. "Oh, it was pretty obvious. You blink your eyes every 6 seconds like clockwork. No human blinks on a timer like that. Also, your breath didn't leave any fog on my face shield when you threatened me just now." Benjamin pointed a finger at the prostrate man before him. "Plus, I poked you pretty hard before I hit you. A human would have reacted to that pain, but you showed no reflexive reaction whatsoever. That means you are either a zombie or a robot. Either way, it seemed prudent to bash your head in." Benjamin stepped forward, hefting his club. "In fact, it looks like your head could use a little more bashing." There was a movement in the surrounding crowd, and suddenly the majordomo robot stepped out and raised his hand. "Just a moment there, young man. Let's not have any more property damage," the robot called out. Benjamin froze, and Lemontime and the boy turned to stare wide-eyed at the speaker. "Is it just me?" Lemontime said in confusion. "Or did the majordomo robot's voice change? He sounds just like Dr. Glockenspiel now." "I noticed," Benjamin said through gritted teeth. The majordomo robot stepped forward and walked around the damaged man sitting still on the grass. "Well," the majordomo said, "you certainly did a number on my ambassador robot. The cranial latticework looks crushed beyond repair." The majordomo knelt down next to the sitting robot and grabbed its dangling eyeball with a metallic claw. He tried to shove the organ back into the empty eye socket, but the mechanical eye didn't fit, and it popped back out again to dangle uselessly. "Drat! The orbital socket is warped as well. I'll have to start from scratch and replace the whole head. A pity. This fellow was scheduled to speak before the United Nations next week." "What's going on here, Benjamin?" Captain Lemontime muttered. "Which one of these robots is Dr. Glockenspiel?" Benjamin gripped his club tighter and looked around at the crowd of robots encircling them. "I think they all are." The majordomo turned to him with a mechanical grin plastered on his white, painted face. He touched a finger to his metal nose. "Right on the money. You are pretty clever for a little kid. I didn't expect such a quick response or such a violent reaction. I won't underestimate you again, young man." The majordomo swaggered forward, his head at an angle, and leered at Benjamin. "I'm assuming that is Benjamin Impossible inside that suit? I should have guessed based on the size and the childish antics." The robot turned and inspected Lemon-Time. But who could be hiding inside the other spacesuit? Who is the mystery man behind the iron mask? Are you Professor Impossible? The majordomo reached into a pocket of his fancy robe and pulled out Benjamin's hastily scribbled calling card. Let's see. It looks like you are Lady Lemon, a collector of unicorns and a famous belly dancer. Captain Lemon-Time, I did not realize your military tolerated such avocations. Good for you. Captain Lemon-Time looked between the damaged robot on the ground and the majordomo standing before him. Both of you are speaking with the same voice. What's going on here? The majordomo robot grinned and froze while one of the female robots from the crowd stepped forward. The womanly robot twirled her parasol umbrella and daintily held out a metallic claw. She also spoke in Glockenspiel's voice, but in a poorly rendered falsetto. I'd love to see you belly dance, Captain Lemon-Time. Maybe you can teach me some new moves. What does it mean? Captain Lemon-Time asked Benjamin. What's going on here, Benjamin? Is Glockenspiel a computer program? Has he cloned himself somehow? Hardly, Benjamin said with a frown. I think that Glockenspiel is just controlling these robots with remote control. You'll notice that he only speaks through one of them at a time. Otherwise, the robots seem to be pretty dumb and talk in that weird robot voice. Very clever, young man, Glockenspiel said, his voice emanating from the majordomo robot once again. You are correct. I can individually control my robotic puppets from a great distance using radio signals. I can manipulate their muscle movements and see through their eyes as if I were standing there in person. However, I am only one man, and I cannot control all of my robots at the same time. When not directly manipulated, my creations must default to their programmed behavior routines. The robot placed its hands on its hips and shook its head sadly. However, I think it unfair to call my robots dumb by any measure. Have you ever seen any other autonomous robot behave as realistically as these have today? Well, Benjamin said, looking around at the crowd of robots, I guess this is a step up from the animatronics at Disney World. You've dressed them in pretty dumb costumes, though. Do you think so? Glockenspiel said, looking around with his robotic eyes. I thought I should stick with a period-specific wardrobe to fit the mood of this historic fort. The majordomo looked down at his outfit and smiled. I do admit, however, that this particular puppet looks a little silly. The majordomo reached up with its powerful hands and ripped off its powdered wig, which was glued to its metal scalp. Throwing the wig aside, the majordomo strode over to the injured robot where it sat on the ground. He bent down and pulled the mustache right off the ambassador robot's mangled face. To Benjamin's surprise, the mustache came off easily and in one piece. The majordomo straightened and stuck the hairy appendage to his metallic face. The mustache stuck instantly, like a refrigerator magnet. What do you think? The majordomo asked with another grin. Better? Not really. Now you look like Mr. Potato Head, Benjamin commented. The Glockenspiel robot frowned at this. You are a precocious young man, Master Benjamin. You are still young, and so some allowances must be made for your behavior. However, a child should respect their elders. Didn't the professor teach you that, at least? Dr. Glockenspiel, Benjamin replied coldly. Any respect for you disappeared the moment you attacked my family and kidnapped my little brother. What kind of man kidnaps a baby? I should call you Dr. Glockencoward. You'll probably go down in history as Heinrich von Baby Snatcher. The robot's eyes narrowed, and it gave Benjamin a hard stare. I must remind you of your situation, child. I have you surrounded by an army of Series 1 robotic henchmen. Despite the silly costumes, each of these dumb robots wields a Class 6 laser in its head, capable of pumping several thousand kilowatts of collimated laser energy into your little body. The robot held up one finger. One word from me, and they will all fire. Your armored suit may be tough, but not even an A-12 extravehicular spacesuit will protect you from that many laser blasts at once. Benjamin froze. How did Glockenspiel know the model number of his spacesuit design? The spacesuit wasn't classified, but it was proprietary information that few people outside of NASA would know or care about. The suits were brand new and hadn't even been tested in space yet. If Glockenspiel knew about the suits, what else did he know? The majordomo grinned at Benjamin's discomfort, one robotic eyebrow rising in amusement. I see I have your attention at least, if not your respect. Glockenspiel turned to the assembly and spoke. You there, ZR-12 and ZR-45, pick up the ambassador and take him back to the ship. Leave him in Repair Bay 3 and then return to your charging station to await further instructions. Two of the robots stepped forward, saluted, and walked over to the injured robot. They picked up the mangled creature and carried it out the main gate. As for the rest of you, the majordomo called out, you will remain at defense level 2. Primary targets are Tango 2 and Zulu 3. Fire only upon my command. The robot winked at Benjamin and then yelled out, Dinner is served. The entire crowd of robots saluted, turned, and then walked across the field to sit at the prepared tables. Glockenspiel led Benjamin and Lemontime to the main table and sat down himself. Benjamin followed, but neither he nor the captain deigned to sit down in a chair. Gentlemen, the majordomo asked as he unfolded his napkin, won't you join me for dinner? It is rare that I have guests, especially ones as interesting as the pair of you. Benjamin put his hands on his hips. I've only come here for one thing, mister. I want my brother back. Yes, of course. Did you bring what I asked for? Have you brought me the hyperhelium formula? Benjamin nodded, and the majordomo held up his hand, beckoning for it. Not until I get Charlie back. At that moment, a trumpet rang, and new robots marched in from a side gate. They wore white chef hats upon their head, aprons around their waists, and pushed rolling carts before them. Hold that thought, the majordomo said. Here comes dinner. Several of the robotic chefs swarmed to their table and removed the remaining place settings. The lead robot stood with a napkin over one arm, bowed, and then addressed the majordomo. Esteemed sir, the robot began with a poorly rendered French accent. It was obviously the voice of Dr. Glockenspiel trying to sound like a French waiter. Today's meal is a freshly caught sea bass, blackened with ahi tuna and seared in a glaze of garlic and almond tart. It is garnished with peppercorn and comes with a side of asparagus and garlic mashed potatoes. Benjamin looked at the waiter. Are you kidding me, Glockenspiel? You're controlling the waiter robot now? The majordomo shook his head. Sorry about that. I'm still controlling this puppet. That was just a pre-recorded message I programmed into that robo-chef a few months ago. Being of German background, my French accent is good, no? Even so, the dinner entree sounds delicious. You sure you don't want anything to eat? I'm not hungry, Benjamin answered. Your whole show here makes me sick to my stomach. Besides, you'd probably just poison the meal. The majordomo shrugged its shoulders. Suit yourself. The servers placed the dinner plates before the majordomo and moved on to serve the rest of the robotic army. The majordomo wielded his fork and knife and dove into the meal in front of him. Benjamin, the captain whispered over the helmet's speaker system. What is this weird robot guy eating? The plate in front of him is empty. Benjamin switched his microphone to suit and answered, Who knows? This guy is bizarre if you haven't noticed. Well, the captain replied, you're pretty strange too. Try to warn me before you do anything crazy and stop antagonizing this psycho. I'll try my best, Lemon Baby. Just stay cool and try not to act surprised by anything I do. Benjamin focused his attention back to the robotic glockenspiel before him and flicked his microphone back to the external speaker. So, you on a diet or something? The robot looked up with a blank face. A diet? Oh, you mean the empty plate before me? What you can't see is the scrumptious meal that my control interface overlays onto my vision. Explain, Benjamin prodded. Well, Glockenspiel said, thinking, obviously this robot body I'm wearing doesn't need organic food, it runs on electricity. However, I find the ritual of eating, even in robot form, has a calming effect on my disposition. The majordomo paused, pretending to drink a sip of water from an empty glass, then continued. If nothing else, the maintenance of meals and their traditions helps me pass the time and allows me to practice my social graces when I'm with polite company. Present company excluded, of course. Glockenspiel ate another bite of invisible food and chewed slowly. What were we talking about again? My brother, Charlie. I am here to trade the hyperhelium formula in return for my little brother. Glockenspiel swallowed. That's right, the hyperhelium formula. Let's see it. Not until I see Charlie is safe. Oh, very well, Glockenspiel said with a sigh. The robot's body seemed to freeze for a few seconds. Then it smiled. Here he comes. Benjamin turned to see the robotic waiters returning with a rolling food cart. Something large balanced on top of the cart, covered with a flowing red sheet. With a flourish, the head waiter pulled off the sheet. On the cart sat an enormous glass jar, and inside this jar sat Charlie Impossible, blinking back at them, temporarily blinded by the bright light of his new surroundings. You see, Glockenspiel said, Charlie Impossible, just as promised. That's not Charlie, Benjamin said, unimpressed. You've reached the end of Chapter 16. Before moving on, please leave a like below. Then continue to Chapter 17, Triple Cross.